Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, hoş geldiniz, bienvenidos to Istanbul Development Dialogues 2018. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all here. Now, this is the 4th edition of this forum. It is the 4th time that everybody comes together to get ready for the road to 2030. And the focus this year is very much on partnerships. Why? Because you all need to partner together. Sustainable development is not a one-man job. It is not a solo job. Whether you're a government, an NGO, or a business, you all need to partner up. And the word dialogue is there in the title. And this is very much at the core, at the spirit of what the breakthrough to 2030 is. And it's very much also at the center of why you are all here today. This is a dialogue, a constant dialogue. And for this reason, at any time, please feel free, put your hand up, or if you don't want to do it in person here, if you'd rather do it digitally, this is the hashtag IDD2018. Please tweet in your questions at any time. Now, we have many distinguished guests here today, and thank you very much, all of you, for coming. And I would like especially to say a very big thank you to Cihan Sultanoğlu, who is here, the UN Assistant Secretary General, and also His Excellency Ambassador Murat Yavuz Ateş, Turkey's Deputy Undersecretary for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for coming. But first, we have another distinguished guest who couldn't be here today, but has sent this welcome video, and that's Achim Steiner, the administrator of the UNDP. Take a listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, welcome to the Istanbul Development Dialogues, which over the years have become both a crossroads and a platform for the agenda of development and how it is evolving, but also for putting a spotlight on innovations as they emerge from the frontiers of development work across the planet. I'm delighted to be sending you this brief message at the opening of these development dialogues because I believe that the SDGs and the 2030 Agenda truly do mark a milestone in our global development discourse. Not only have they given us a conceptual framework and a common language through which to look at development, they are universal. They are focused around issues of inequality and equity, but also sustainability as integral to the future of our economies. As representatives of governments, of civil society, of the private sector, of academia and the scientific community, you all appreciate how critical partnerships will be in trying to address this agenda. What has been striking over the past year and a half is how the SDGs have resonated in so many different countries, with so many different actors, in so many different settings. Whether it is with those who are concerned about the challenge of inequality, which continues to divide our societies and often cause strife and conflict, the challenge of sustainability in addressing climate change, the decarbonization of our economies, while at the same time creating livelihoods and jobs for future generations. And all of this while ensuring that our economies can continue to develop and deliver food security, climate security, health, educational services. The 2030 Agenda, the SDGs, truly are a driver for innovation, and it is through this lens that we have also in the United Nations Development Programme designed our new strategic plan. It is to be a platform. It is to be a platform for integrating different competencies, capacities, institutional opportunities, and to work together in support of countries that are putting in place the conditions for achieving a 2030 Agenda and making the Sustainable Development Goals the best insurance against both unmanageable ecological risks, unacceptable social risks, and ultimately, when these two risks combine, also risks to our economic future. So, once again, welcome to the Istanbul Development Dialogues. I wish you very productive discussions, and we in UNDP look forward to drawing from the wisdom, the experience, and the expertise that you have assembled here. Thank you. Teşekkür ederim.
And now I'd like to give the floor to Cihan Sultanoğlu, the UN Assistant Secretary General, for the opening remarks to the Istanbul Development Dialogues 2018. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Excellency, Ambassador Murat Yavuz Ateş, Deputy Undersecretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Turkey, Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear friends and colleagues. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the 4th edition of the Istanbul Development Dialogues. As you all know, this year the dialogues are dedicated to partnerships for the Sustainable Development Goals, the road to 2030. Their importance is apparent in the title. The Global Agenda 2030 and its accompanying Sustainable Development Goals are the world's development agenda. They represent a commitment by the world's governments and the global development community to ensuring peace and prosperity, that we live within our planetary boundaries, and that we leave no one behind in doing so. Of course, many meetings and fora are devoted to these issues, and you have attended many of them, I'm sure. However, many of these occur within intergovernmental frameworks like the ECOSOC High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development that takes place in New York, or the Regional Forum on Sustainable Development that takes place in Geneva, and organized by the UN Economic Commission for Europe. Other meetings are organized by international financial institutions who focus on how to move from billions of dollars of official development assistance to the trillions of dollars needed to finance the 2030 agenda. Other meetings are convened by private companies who are ensuring that their business models are ecologically and socially sustainable, as well as commercially profitable. And still other meetings are held by academic and civil society institutions that ask hard questions about whether, in fact, we are moving towards sustainable development and not away from it. This year's Istanbul Development Dialogues connect these different sustainable strands and narratives together. Under a broad partnership heading, we are bringing the government practitioners who are making the nuts and bolts of Agenda 2030 work together with representatives of financial institutions who are reorienting development finance in support of their efforts. We are joined in this by representatives of private companies who are designing and commercializing the technologies needed for sustainable production and consumption. Last but not least, leading representatives of civil society and academic institutions are also present. These partners are often placed to ask hard but necessary questions about how the sacrifices and trade-offs required for sustainable development are being managed. They are also on the cutting edge of efforts to apply innovative, forward-looking platform approaches to development within the UN system and other development agencies, as well as in governments and the private sector. At the United Nations Development Programme, we believe that it's only through partnerships and common efforts among these different stakeholders that we can make real progress towards sustainable development on the road to 2030. In this lies the importance of this year's Istanbul Development Dialogues. This is also why we are so pleased that we have such a strong participation. We look forward to working with you in our efforts to go beyond business as usual to development, to ask hard questions about whether we are fit for purpose for implementing Agenda 2030, and to identify new, innovative solutions to the challenges that we face collectively. As you know, the 2030 Agenda is often described in terms of the 5 Ps, of which partnerships is only one. In addition to dedicated sessions on the role of partnerships between all the stakeholders, Our program also features sessions devoted to the other 4 Ps: peace, people, planet, and prosperity. We hope this program will accommodate the breadth of perspectives needed for the multi-sectoral partnerships that must underpin truly integrated development approaches. Moreover, as in the past years, the IDD also features a partnerships forum, open mic session, in which representatives of institutions that cannot be accommodated in other parts of the program may take the floor and share their perspectives on these issues. As we move in the next 2 days, I would like to encourage all of us to keep 3 sets of questions in mind. First, how do we get prices right for sustainable development? Economics 101 teaches us that activities with negative externalities should be taxed, while those with positive externalities should be subsidized. But in the region with some of the world's lowest employment rates, taxes on labor 1/3 or more of average wages. This tax wedge pushes people out of the labor force, pushes jobs into the informal sector. Such policies are difficult to reconcile with SDGs 8 and 10, which emphasize the importance of inclusive growth, decent jobs, and first and foremost, reducing inequalities. Meanwhile, state budgets allocate billions of dollars to fossil fuel subsidies that increase carbon footprints and slow economic diversification. These subsidies are at odds with the national commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that have not been undertaken under the Paris Climate Change Accord, as well as with SDG 13 on climate action. What can be done to make sustainable production and consumption realities and not just slogans? Second question, how can we get governance for sustainable development right? Agenda 2030 and the SDGs are based on the premise that rights-based approaches are preconditions for sustainable development. But the liberal global order on which development cooperation is based is increasingly challenged by populist preferences for group identity over individual rights. Meanwhile, governance for sustainable development debates often narrowly focus on technocratic questions of policy coordination and coherence. How can we ensure that governance for sustainable development leaves no one behind, as well as providing technical support for national SDG implementation? And the third question, how do we get innovation right? Technology and innovation have obviously made and continue to make critical contributions to socioeconomic development and good governance. This is apparent in the ways in which governments are embracing digitalization agendas and in which IT sectors are producing growing numbers of decent jobs across the region. In Kyrgyzstan, the government's Tazakum digitalization program is seeking to accelerate progress towards sustainable development. Belarus's ICT sector now generates twice as much foreign exchange as do pipeline shipments of energy to Europe. But growing numbers of people view technology and innovation as making traditional forms of employment and social protection obsolete, while potentially creating new threats to privacy and human rights. Meanwhile, businesses and governments are increasingly concerned about preventing hacking, fake news, and cyber warfare. How can global sustainable development processes help ensure that innovation serves people rather than the other way around? These are difficult and sometimes even uncomfortable questions. But if we are serious about sustainable development, they must be asked and answers must be found. At UNDP, we are committed to helping all our partners, all stakeholders, to find answers to these questions. Fortunately, there are also many good examples on which to draw. within the region and beyond. The government of Ukraine since 2014 has dramatically decreased fossil fuel subsidies as part of its efforts to promote energy security, ecological sustainability, and good governance. It has also significantly cut taxes on labor and is now benefiting from growing employment rates and wages. Turkey is not only accommodating over 3 million refugees from Syria, it is also granting them access to Turkish labor markets. Many other such examples can be shared, and no doubt will be shared during the next 2 days. Let me stress that here in UNDP, we are committed to supporting all these efforts. We are also working closely with other UN agencies, as well as the World Bank and other international financial institutions, in support of efforts to align national development programming with the SDGs via the so-called MAPS platform. By assisting with SDG mainstreaming, acceleration, and policy support, MAPS helps governments put in place the frameworks needed, not only to report against the Sustainable Development Goals, but also to find triple win solutions to national, economic, social, and environmental challenges. The technical meeting that we held yesterday, and I know some of you participated in it, on the initial lessons learned from the MAPS missions that have been undertaken in Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Moldova, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan, was an important step on the road to 2030. These lessons can be applied to the MAPS missions scheduled to be undertaken this year in Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia, Kyrgyzstan, Serbia, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan. It is then very much our hope that this year's Istanbul Development Dialogues will not only showcase these efforts, but will also help them to become more significant, more effective, more collectively owned. After all, this is a universal agenda, and this is a cohesive agenda. It's only by working together with all our partners within the UN system, among governments, the international development community, the private sector, and civil society, as well as the academia, that we can hope to move firmly and resolutely on the road to 2030 so that we won't leave anyone behind. Thank you very much, and I wish you much success. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to introduce His Excellency Ambassador Murat Yavuz Ateş, Turkey's Deputy Undersecretary for Foreign Affairs, for his opening remarks to the conference. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Assistant Secretary General Cihan Sultanoğlu, Deputy Ministers, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to warmly welcome you all on behalf of my government to the 4th International Development Dialogue and to Istanbul. Turkey is honored to be the host of this important development policy forum, and I want to take this opportunity to thank the UNDP Regional Hub for Europe and CIS for their efforts to organize an inspiring event each year. Istanbul Development Dialogue, as a platform for forward-looking knowledge exchange, has become a global flagship event in development cooperation circles and beyond, which provides a vibrant intellectual and professional environment, reinforcing regional hubs' role as a development thought leader. The presence of more than 400 participants is a testimony to the significant contribution this gathering makes to complement and support intergovernmental processes to implement sustainable development goals. It is not a coincidence that Istanbul hosts events of this nature. Turkey aims to turn Istanbul into a global hub for UN agencies and other international organizations, particularly those that are specialized in different aspects of development cooperation. UNDP Regional Hub has alone hosted around 40 major events annually, firmly positioning Istanbul as a venue of choice for UNDP and the UN family. Our ambition is to become a hub of new initiatives, new ideas, and new solutions. We are hoping to partner with the countries of the South, as well as those of the North, to make this vision come true in the near future. Distinguished participants, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is an ambitious framework that urges all stakeholders to take robust action for the noble goal of leaving no one behind. Turkey's national development model is human-centered and, like SDGs, focuses on economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protection. Turkey has been one of the 22 countries that presented voluntary national review during the first high-level political forum in 2016. In 2017, the Turkish government conducted a comprehensive stock-taking project in consultation with the relevant stakeholders in order to identify the current state of affairs with regard to the implementation of the SDGs in Turkey. This analysis provided a unique opportunity to integrate and mainstream SDGs for our main national policy documents. Turkey believes that the SDGs cannot be achieved without strengthened global partnership for mobilizing the means of implementation. Official development assistance has a critical role in achieving SDGs, especially in least developed countries. Preliminary data for 2017 suggests that Turkey's ODA for this year has reached $8.2 billion, doubling since 2015. Thus, Turkey exceeded 0.7% ODA per GNI target determined by the United Nations since 2016. We value our partnership with the UNDP, which assists Turkey in strengthening its role and capacity as an emerging donor. We are committed to continuing this cooperation. Our partnership with UNDP strengthens the multilateral dimension of our development cooperation. Our objective is to shift the focus of our partnership from domestic projects to cooperation in third countries, that is, triangular cooperation with special emphasis on LDCs and LICs. Efforts to achieve SDGs will require a massive amount of financial resources. It is essential to diversify financial instruments and direct them towards sustainable development priorities. Therefore, Turkey, together with UNDP, pioneered to emphasize the role of private sector to achieve SDGs through the establishment of Istanbul International Center for Private Sector in Development back in 2013. Istanbul Center today serves the whole UNDP system with tools, resources, and global platforms on inclusive business, impact investment, and Islamic finance, skills development, and resilience, just like the Istanbul Regional Hub. Ladies and gentlemen, this meeting coincides with a time when comprehensive reform process is underway to further strengthen UN development system. We would be happy to hear how you see the way forward. The achievement of sustainable, balanced, and strong global economic growth is crucial for global stability and security. Rising inequalities in the world necessitates the international community to take comprehensive and robust action towards inclusive growth. The 2030 Agenda motto, "Leaving no one behind," is only possible by adopting a truly inclusive approach. Inclusiveness means listening to each and every stakeholder. Strong ownership is a key feature for effective, timely implementation. Addressing global challenges under the framework of 2030 agenda requires adequate means of implementation. The main elements are finance, capacity building, technology transfer, and market access for the least developed and low-income countries. Furthermore, current humanitarian crises around the world are closely related to the development challenges of the countries. Humanitarian assistance should go hand in hand with development assistance, thereby building infrastructural human capacity and increasing resilience to shocks. The share of Turkey's ODA allocated to least developing countries exceeded $1.5 billion in the past 5 years. Turkey is strengthening its status as a reliable development partner for LDCs. Furthermore, as part of its policy to support the least developing countries, the Technology Bank, a new UN entity dedicated to the LDCs, was operationalized on 22nd September with the signing of the host country agreement between the government of Turkey and the United Nations in New York. It marks an important milestone in global efforts to strengthen the science, technology, and innovation capacity in the world's 47 least developed countries. The new bank will contribute to the efforts to achieve Sustainable Development Goal Target 17.8 and respond to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development's principle of leaving no one behind. The Technology Bank will be located in Gebze, Turkey. This bank is expected to improve the utilization of scientific and technological solutions in the world's poorest countries and promote the integration of least developed countries into the global knowledge-based economy. An SDG incubator to be located within the Technology Bank in Gebze will train and support startups and new enterprises which are capable of innovating products and services to address the needs of vulnerable communities, particularly women, children, and refugees. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development has set a new scene for governmental and non-governmental actors. Business as usual is not an option anymore. In order to achieve the global goals, multi-stakeholder partnerships are needed in all areas and at all levels. In particular, we need triangular partnership between governments, private sector, and civil society to generate urgent transformative changes and innovate business models to support inclusive growth. I wish you all a productive meeting. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, just a very quick announcement. We're going to take a few minutes to arrange the stage and we'll be back with you in just a few minutes, okay?